Hello friendos, it's Bella from the Bookish Badger, and today I'm coming at you guys with a TBR video. I don't do these very often. Very occasionally I'll do one for a readathon, but I am a mood reader kind of gal, so I don't tend to put out TBRs, but at the beginning of the year there was this thing going around on Twitter where everybody was like, hey, 12 friends, 12 books, and I'll read the 12 books throughout the year. And I was like, I want to do that. So I am here telling you guys about my 12 friends, 12 books year-long TBR. So it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. I put out a tweet and was like, hey everybody, I want 12 friends to recommend me a total of 12 books for me to read throughout the year. Give me your recommendations and I will read them. And so these are the books that my friends recommended me. And just a little heads up, I'm not really going to be giving like synopses of these books because like I usually like to go into books pretty blindly without knowing too much about them. So if I know anything about these books, it's really just like a periphery skim over, like it's not enough to really explain the whole thing to ya. As well, I won't really be holding any of these books up because I only own, I believe, 2 of them? Yeah, I only own 2 of them, so I thought it'd be kind of silly to hold up 2 books and not the other 10. So starting off, we have the ever lovely, my best friend, Sophie from Sophie's Book Nook, and she recommended me Frankly in Love by David Yoon. See, Sophie's been recommending this book to me for, I think, a couple of years now, and she's very smart. She, first of all, bought this book for me for Christmas, and once she saw that I was doing this, she slid right in and recommended this one. Very good book for her to recommend. I've been wanting to read it, I just like haven't gotten into it, and this is the perfect thing to like propel me to finally like, okay, now it's time, get to it. But speaking of Frankly in Love, like I said, that is one of the ones that I own. And the next one that I own is from Becky at CoffeeCocktailsandBooks, and that is, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade. Becky and I got to talking about romance books when on one of our Rocky Horror Readathon live streams we started talking about, I think I brought up the romance book club for one of the prompt recommendations, and she was like, oh my god, I love that one, and was like, oh my god, I love that one too. And then a week or so later she was like, I just started reading this book. It has such bromance book club vibes, which is just like the sweetest, purest, most delicious romance book. It is just like a whole lot of fun, and that's what I mean by sweet and pure, not necessarily like clean, but more like just a whole big bucket of fun. And it's just like absolute candy to read it, and she was like, this has such vibes of that book, you would love it so much. And I was like, oh my god, I'm putting it on my TBR. And then she very kindly gifted it to me not that long after we finished the Rocky Horror Readathon, which was just the absolute sweetest thing ever. So I'm really excited to get to that one on such a high recommendation from Becky, and also to just read more of the romance genre, because the romance book club was sort of my first introduction into it and I really loved it, but I haven't really read more since then, and the specific sort of romance genre I like is the kind with cute animated covers, and this book has that sort of cover, so I am jazzed. The next book I have on this list is Where Dreams Descend by Jenella Angelus, which was recommended to me by Alora, who is at booktube_life on Twitter. Now this is a book that I had never heard of prior to Alora recommending this to me. However, I know that Alora is a theater geek, and specifically I know that we share an intense love of Hamilton, so I'm just assuming that she's gonna recommend me a good book, you know? Listen, I just choose to trust the taste of people who love Hamilton as much as she does. The next one we have is called The Book of X, and it's by Sarah Rose Etter. This was recommended to me by Morgan from Morgyyreads. I love Morgan with my entire hecking heart, and we share a bit of a reading bond in my mind because one of their favorite books is The Raven Boys, and one of my favorite books is The Raven Boys, and The Raven Boys is one of those books where you either really don't like it, or you really do like it. And we both really do. So when someone really does, I tend to trust their recommendations. And not only is this a recommendation from Morgan, I watched their 2020 favorite books of list on BookTube, and this was her number one. So it's gonna be good. Like, I have no doubt in my mind, and I cannot wait to read it. Next up, we have The Underdog by Marcus Zuzak, which was recommended to me by Lucifer over at Argyle Dinosaur. It's funny, I loved The Book Thief when I read it. It's probably one of my favorite books of all time, and I've not read another Marcus Zuzak book since, and Lucifer said that this was even better than that in their opinion, so I have really high expectations considering how incredibly good, like, The Book Thief was. Plus, they offered buddy reading this with me, so I really hope that that ends up working out and that we do get to buddy read this one together. The next book on the list is Harley in the Sky by Akimi Bowman, which was recommended to me by one of my fellow sunshowers, Emma from emmanovella. I know that this is one of Emma's favorite books of all time, and I know that they seriously mean business because she literally has a tattoo dedicated to this book. And just like, come on, what an automatic, like, intrigue for wanting to read a book. Like, somebody loved this book so much that they got a tattoo of it on their body. I'm so curious. I really am excited to read this one. Plus, I'm pretty sure it has something to do with circuses, and circus books always intrigue me. And that's not to say I don't think that I've even read any circus books yet, to my immediate memory, but whenever I see a circus book, I'm like, man, that seems like it'll be a really cool read. So maybe this will be my first one and maybe I'll fall absolutely in love. That is what I'm hoping for. Next here we have Even the Darkest Stars by Heather Fawcett, which was recommended to me by Rachel, who's from Reads with Rachel on BookTube. I have a good feeling about this one because the first book Rachel recommended was actually Furyborn by Claire Legrand, which was pretty funny because when I read that tweet I was taking a break from reading Kingsbane, which is the second book in the Imperium Furyborn trilogy. So needless to say, as I was on the second in the trilogy, I really love that book series so far, and if she loves it too, I'm really curious to see what the book she recommended is going to be like. Next up, we have a book called Queenie, which is by Candice Carty-Williams and was recommended to me by Mel from A Book Fiend Named Mel, which I just have to say, I love that as a channel name. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Mel was doing this, gathering books for this challenge at the beginning of the year as well, and I believe I recommended I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson to her. So I really hope that she reads and likes that one, and I really hope that I like Queenie. I know that I absolutely could die over the cover. It is gorgeous, and I'm a sucker for a good cover, so I am really hoping that it's gonna be one of those where it's like, the cover is gorgeous and the writing is gorgeous. It just makes the perfect book. Next up we have Jane Anonymous, which is by Lori Faria Stolars. This was recommended to me by Theresa from Just Bookish Things. I've not heard of this book before, which actually I've not heard of a few books on this list. I don't think I've been keeping up with telling you guys about which books I haven't heard of before. But anyway, this is one of them. But from the description, it seems to be a bit of a thriller, which is going to be a little bit out of my norm, a little bit out of my comfort zone. But that is part of the reason why I wanted to do something like this. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to step outside of my box a little. Next up is Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Khorram, and this was recommended to me by Marybeth from Marybeth Dwellsinbooks. She is one of the biggest gosh darn sweethearts on the planet, and the cover of this book is just a beautiful piece of art, and the title is super intriguing, and I don't know if I've really overlapped many books with Marybeth, so I'm really interested to see what sorts of books she likes to read, because I love her as a human being and I would love to share some reading tastes with her. Coming up near the end here, we have The Moment by T.C. Anderson, which was recommended to me by Max from Mackenzie Brynn Rap. Again, I'm just really excited to see what sorts of books Max likes to read, because what just like a great human being to be around. I got to meet them at BookCon, we had some really fun conversations, we took some pictures together, and just an enjoyable human being. Just an enjoyable presence, an enjoyable light in the room. And last but not least, I saved this one till the end for a reason, and that book is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, which was recommended to me by Merritt over at Merritt. The reason I saved this one for last is because this was actually the first book that I've read off of this list. It is mid-February while I am filming this, and I am a little bit behind on my TBR so far as I've only read one, but talk about a good one and a great one to start off with. I don't want to give away too much because I would like to revisit this list at the end of the year and make a full video about it, reviewing or at least wrapping up the books on it and talking about what I really liked about them or didn't like, depending on how it goes. But this one, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I screamed at the end. Like, it was a wild ending, such a great book with such like cool messaging. I got to talk to Merritt about it the day after I finished it, and it was so good. Like, what a good recommendation. I am so glad I read that one. And thus, it is giving me very high hopes for this list because I really started it off with a bang by starting with reading this one. Plus, when we were talking, Merritt recommended me a couple of podcasts that Hank Green is on, which I now want to listen to because I now trust Merritt's recommendation inherently because they recommended me a good book, and I want to hear more from Hank Green just to seeing how good his book was. And I really want to read so badly the second one in this duology, but of course it's got like 5 bazillion holds on it on Overdrive, which is where I listened to the first one on audio, and it's like a 14-week wait time, and that is just way too long because what a cliffhanger, and it was so good, and I just need to know what happens next. I need to know what happens next. So that wraps up my 12 Friends, 12 Books TBR. I am so excited to go on this journey throughout the year, especially starting off with that high of An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, and I haven't decided which one I want to read next. It's dependent on either what audiobook comes in first, or maybe I want to start one of the physical ones, but I gotta read some library books that I have out first. We'll see how it goes, but I am determined to finish all 12 by the end of the year. I would love to hear from you guys if you would ever be interested in doing a challenge like this, if you have any recommendations for me that I might jumpstart with next year, because I think that I'm going to want to do this next year. We'll see how this year goes again, but I'm very hopeful and I'm hoping to do it again next year. I'd love to hear if you guys have read any of the books on this list, any of it, all of it. Please leave it in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, do not hesitate to give it a thumbs up. Do not hesitate to subscribe for more content coming soon, and I will see you in the next video. Bookish Badger, signing off.